Hello students, welcome to my class. Today we'll be doing the poem London written by William Blake. William Blake was born in 1757 in London. He was an English poet, painter, and printmaker. Largely unrecognized during his lifetime, Blake is now considered a seminal figure in the history of the poetry and visual arts of Romantic Age. Although Blake was considered mad by his contemporaries for his idiosyncratic views, he is held in high regard by later critics for his expressiveness and creativity and for the philosophical and mystical undercurrents within his work. He was a committed Christian but was hostile to the Church of England. He was also influenced by the ideals and ambitions of the French and American revolutions. His poem London is taken from the Songs of Experience. It reveals the poet's feelings towards the society he lived in. England in 1800s became very oppressive, influenced by the French Revolution. It started to impose laws which restrict the freedom of individuals. At first, Blake loved London. He wrote that golden London and a silver Thames thronged the shining spires and corded ships. It is taken from Poetical Sketches. But after French Revolution, the British government began to oppress the civil democratic activities. Then London was quite different from before, and everything was covered with darkness, terror, and the poem London is concerned with all the so-called greatness of the city of London. Here Blake demonstrates how a city is a place of tyranny, misery, suffering, and social injustice. So rather than chart the greatness of the city of London, Blake focuses on the negatives, the downside of a so-called great city. The poem argues and suggests that the elites and the upper classes, the aristocrats, bankers, businessmen have chartered and divided the city amongst themselves, and the poor have nowhere to go. As the poem proceeds, we see three major examples of this poverty and suffering. He hopes to showcase the chimney sweeper, as we now recognized as a child labor, a soldier who fights battles and has perhaps come back injured from the wars, and the harlot or prostitute who is poor and has a child to feed as well. These are the principal characters in the poem. They become emblems or symbols of how the city has become indifferent to misery and poverty and suffering. More importantly, Blake here and in other poems wants to show the city has created this poverty and suffering for all these people. In the process of talking about these characters, Blake criticizes the major institutions, the church, the palace, and marriage. The poem revolves around the sufferings of these three characters, the chimney sweeper, the soldier, and the harlot, representing the institutions of religion by which he is referring to Christianity, and it refers to palace. It refers to palace, that is monarchy, and finally the harlot or the prostitute, that refers to or emblematizes the institution of marriage. To understand this poem, we also need to know something about his poems collection, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. In many of his poems, he shows how humans are cruel towards other human beings. Blake was very harsh on this infinite capacity of humans to be cruel. and he attacked the religious institutions, but not really addressing the problems of the poor. Rather, he expressed the radical thought that religion ensures that some people are kept in poverty so that we can show our pity and compassion towards them. This is an attack on so called philanthropy or generosity of people because our charity is not based on our inner compassion and goodness, it is based on a social condition of injustice. Pity is not what makes us human.